Are
Yeah.
you retired or are you still working?
Oh, I've been retired since 2001.
Since
Professionally. I've done a couple of things since then,
2001. I
but
retired in 2013.
Oh, we're live. Okay.
uh, but
Are we
in
live
it,
now?
I managed a H&R Block store for a season,
We're live now.
but different things. Okay, one of the things we were thinking of talking about tonight is impeachment. Oddly enough, everybody else is talking about it, and also Syria. Again, a topic that's on everybody's minds right now. Figured we'd initially talk about impeachment. Uh, Number one, to figure out what is impeachment. There seems to be a great number of ideas where impeachment is something very, very specific. It's indicting a federal officer. It doesn't have to be the president, although most of the time we think of it in those terms. We have, in fact, impeached federal judges and other officers, and it's just an indictment. It's an accusation, like a grand jury might indict someone, and then it goes to the Senate, and the Senate acts as a court. The 100 senators are the jury, and if two-thirds of those senators decide that the federal officer, in the current case Donald Trump, should not continue in his office, he's then removed.
Yes.
That's the
But
process.
it's very clear that it's the House of Representatives who initiate
Yes.
the impeachment. And they vote on it. And if the House of Representatives would like impeachment, they recommend that and send it to the Senate.
Right.
And the Senate, like you said, is two-thirds would have to do that. Now, the question that I always have is impeachment based on the idea that we have so many, for example, so many Democrats in the House of Representatives, but when you get to the Senate, you have the Republican in charge. So my question this, does it become political again, or just how does that work?
It's not supposed to be political. The problem is it is. Back the first impeachment of a president, Andrew Johnson, was political. Andrew Johnson refused to make Reconstruction of the South after the Civil War as harsh as the Republican majorities in the House and the Senate wanted it to be. And so the Republicans found an excuse, which had nothing to do with Reconstruction directly, and impeached Johnson. It was one Republican senator who said this is not a good idea, who made the difference and kept him from being removed from office. The other two, Nixon was probably less political. Just everyone was disgusted after they found out all the things he had actually done. Clinton was definitely political. And Trump, I think, is a combination of Clinton and Nixon. This is my personal view. Trump has done so many things to almost force impeachment. Remember, Nancy Pelosi was trying to slow everything down and say, no, 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 we're not ready. This isn't a good idea. And Trump just kept pushing and pushing and pushing.
Well, in my mind, there is always some element of politics involved. I mean, look at the position of Nixon. Until the tapes came out, I think there was a lot of Republican support for him, and it's only when the real story about the tapes came out that everybody flipped. Most of them flipped, not everybody, but most of them flipped. And so then he was forced to resign. But at the same time, you look at Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton's was of course, it was a lot of political drama. And while as this was going on, you know, Gingrich was doing the same thing, but nobody knew about it, and he just carried on. And now you have Trump. But at the although I also do not like that Democrats are spending their political will and wealth on creating an impeachment story, but at the same time, I think Nancy Pelosi is, I think, as you said rightly, that she's now forced to go into this game, to walk into this essentially a minefield, actually, to really assess whether this is a possible, whether there can be a possible story built around the case. Because right now you have to also see that they're really in the evidence collecting phase actually right now. They have not created the articles of impeachment, and even after they collect the evidence, they have not really impeached him. They have just collected the evidence. They will have to create the articles of impeachment and then vote on that. And then it goes to the Senate, and where I would
2/3.
Yes, I would expect, unless Mitch McConnell agrees, which actually in one of his latest statements kind of shows that he's kind of he's disgusted with what Trump has done lately, but he's not really saying that it is he is into the impeachment lobby yet.
Right. As a matter of fact, guy from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, introduced a bill with McConnell as a co-sponsor, saying that the House is doing disgusting things with this investigation. How can you possibly investigate the president? You can't do it. And interestingly enough, the state of New York is trying to get the federal tax returns and release the state tax returns. And the lawyer for Trump, who is fighting this, says you can't investigate, you can't charge, you can't do anything to a sitting president. Once he's not president anymore, you can do whatever is appropriate, but you can't do it. And the judge asked, so if Trump walks down this Fifth Avenue in New York City and shoots somebody, you can't investigate it, you can't charge him? No, you can't, not while he's president. And although he didn't say it, the implication is if the Constitution says there's a way out of this, it's called impeachment. But you can't do that according to the Senate, because he's the president and you're tying him up and he can't do his job. Clinton was able to do his job during that period, but Trump's not quite as good. And it occurred to me, if you can't even investigate a crime, and the only way you can get rid of the guy is to impeach him, what he can do is he can go down and arrest, or shoot, as the case may be, whatever is appropriate, all of his opponents, and then you have the vote. Everybody votes that we don't want to remove him, and he gets to stay. So given that, we're actually suggesting that whoever wants to be president forever, that's what you do.
Well, isn't actually President Trump wants to be president for life. He is trying to figure out ways to do that. He has actually suggested one time something about the third term.
I'm not 100% sure that he's serious about it, but I do know that President Nixon was actually actively investigating and starting organizations to see whether, in fact, he could be president a third time.
I mean, he could have been had he not. I think at that time the mood of the country was such that he probably could have managed that had this Watergate not blossomed.
Well,
at
after
that time.
after the fixing of the election in '72,
Yes.
he probably could have fixed the
Yes.
election in
Yes,
'76.
he could have done that.
Well, I'm
But
not.
and so Trump is now learning.
Yes.
I mean,
He has learned
everybody has their heroes, and evidently Nixon is one of his.
I'm not sure that we are headed in the right direction for the impeachment of Trump.
How do you mean?
I think that right now, all of us citizens around the country is listening and learning something about this president. And my idea is that rather than head for impeachment that separate the country even more, that we citizens should vote him out of office come the next election. And it's not that far away.
Well, the question is, assuming that it's true, and according to the FBI, it is true, and CIA and Robert Mueller and a few other biased organizations, we didn't vote him in directly. He got in by fixing the election, by utilizing a variety of different things to encourage some groups to come out and vote and discourage others, and by essentially lying. And since we have done nothing to prevent that from happening in the future, and we know that the Russians attempted, we think unsuccessfully, but attempted to get into state voting machines, maybe it will even be easier for somebody to say, okay, you won by 1,500 votes. We'll have the election tomorrow, but we took care of the results. Then did the people vote him in or not? Now, maybe they did. And one of the beauties of democracy is that you can do, there's no rule against being stupid.
Well, the other piece to this is he has recently asked China to help him.
Yes.
But is just asking China as a foreign power to help him, is that an impeachable offense?
It's against election law.
But how come the election? How come the election? There's no election commission actually.
Oh, there is one.
But how come they're not running after him?
Well, because he hasn't appointed replacements
Committee.
for various people, so there's not a quorum, so they can't do anything.
So why
That's
aren't
a
we?
smart way to do
Well,
it.
it's part and parcel with the idea
Okay.
of shooting all your opponents. You make all the mechanisms not work.
So
Why now we are absolutely focused on impeaching, but why aren't we focused on how the other countries were able to get into our system? And we need to be working on how we can fix that sort of thing.
There are several bills passed by the House that would address, whether they would fix anything or not, time would tell, but at least address that issue. And Mitch McConnell accuses the House Democrats of being unable to walk and chew gum at the same time, evidently can't do either, because he refuses to even bring it up for a vote. So, if the Democrats have any hope of changing anything, they have to take the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and they have to hope like hell that Ginsburg doesn't die, because you know damn well in about 30 seconds McConnell will approve anybody
Yes,
that
what
Trump.
I mean, they have this Federalist Society list, which is interesting that they have this Federalist Society, which has the arms in it in every law school apparently throughout the country, and they have created a list of judges and other officials to be appointed to the to federal government. And because President Trump promised them that he was going to use the list, they all supported him wholeheartedly.
Right.
And that's what he is using to choose the judges.
And now that they know that President Trump did these things, wouldn't things change the
No.
next election?
Well, that means what you are saying is this is what the Democrats say. But what the Federalist Society people say and what all the Fox News people say is, and what Lindsey Graham says, is it's all made up story, and because Democrats lost, you have to accept the fact that Democrats are crying wolf, or are whining, and they are all the time basically they are basically worried about that they lost and we gotta beat this guy up. That's all. That's all they are doing.
Their favorite term is elections have consequences.
Yes.
And of course, since the Democrats won the House in the last election, they're making stuff up.
Yes.
There's no consequences for the fact that the Republicans lost the House. That's wrong. The only consequence that matters is if the Republicans win.
I mean, but the key thing about the opposition is that you can berate the opposition and give them labels, and as long as you have created a label and affixed it to the opposition, which pushes them into against the wall in terms of common people, we will look at that opposition in the same manner. For example, they are labeled as all commies, all pinkos, and that's it. We forget it. We don't want them.
Well, how can we bring this country together and the citizens together if we're so far apart?
Well, the president, I think, should be in a position to bring people together. I think
that's his job.
I think that is part of his job, actually,
Right.
to bring people together. Because after all, when we vote in the election, only one person wins. That person's job is to make sure both sides come together, because he's not the president of the Republicans or the president of only of the Appalachian region or only the president of the southern states. He's the president of the whole country and the most powerful person in the world, actually. And if he can't bring all the people together, I think the country is heading towards the wrong milestone. That's not good.
I think part of the problem is he doesn't see, my personal view, Robert Creek's personal view, is that Donald Trump believes that he should be king, divine right. And the people he respects and pays attention to and likes to pal around with in their own particular world are that kind of person: Putin, Kim, Erdogan, etc. And so when we were talking a little bit about impeachment, the thing that they've decided they're going to impeach him on is a phone call to the Ukraine saying, hey, we know you need this stuff, do us a favor. Using the money as the gift. You do me a favor, I'll do you a favor. And it is legal for him to do that. He was doing a legitimate thing for a corrupt purpose. And it's the corrupt purpose is the problem. For example, if I go into a store and I say, hey, for X number of dollars a week, I will protect you. There will be no damage. Nobody's going to break your windows or any of that stuff. That's legitimate. There are companies that do exactly that. If I go into the store and say for a couple of dollars a week, I will protect you from me, then it's a legitimate thing I'm proposing for a corrupt purpose.
Well, that is where I'm not very clear that what was the language of the telephone call. Was it that you will do this and then we will give you the money, or was it just a general phone call that you were investigating Biden and why don't you do this, and then we will also give you the money? Was it really, as this ambassador has kind of pointed out, there was a real quid pro quo?
Well, understand
but according
timing.
to Trump, there was none.
For several months before that phone call, Giuliani and others were out there saying, if you want anything from this government, you have to publicly stand up and say, I'm going to investigate the Bidens. Because that's the only corruption that we care about. The fact that people are running off with the chairs and the money from the Treasury, immaterial, we don't care. The real corruption was the Bidens being involved. If you don't do that, then you don't get anything. Then when he gets on the phone and they're talking and saying, yeah, we can do something like that, but I'd like you to do me a favor. Now, a legitimate act for a corrupt purpose. And the Republicans are saying right now, well, if the Ukrainians didn't know what he was talking about, it cannot possibly be a threat. Well, Giuliani was running around for months before that, making sure they knew exactly what he was talking about.
Yeah, that part is what is kind of interesting. That how come Giuliani was involved earlier, much earlier, and he was given an authority from what I heard, that he was given authority to use the State Department resources, and State Department was instructed to help him. So I don't know where is the actual positive link that really connects it to Trump, or is it just all hearsay?
Giuliani says, I'm Trump's lawyer. Trump agrees, he's my lawyer. Giuliani goes around and tells people, I'm Trump's lawyer and this is what we need to do. Whether he says, give me write me a check for $10 million and then I'll give you something, that would be hard to fight against. Not impossible, but hard to fight against. But if he says, as, by the way, mob bosses often say to those who they're giving instructions to, things that everybody understands what they're talking about, but unless you understand the code, questionable whether that's what they really mean. That's exactly how Trump is operating.
Yeah, that's an interesting analogy, that you cannot really take connect all the links in the chain all the way to the commander-in-chief, because the links are made in such a way, as you said, in the underworld, that they are broken a lot of
There's
times.
always a fall guy who...
So what are you and you going to do about this?
Well, going back to your proposition, is that we could vote the person out at the time of election, but will it be too late? And that's where I'm kind of in the middle. Although, as I said, I have been and not in the camp to impeach the president, but in the meantime, is there overwhelming evidence that you can't wait? So that's what I'm waiting for Nancy Pelosi group to come out with, the evidence which we don't have yet. And that's what actually Republicans are railing against, that how come when Clinton was impeached, at that time all the evidentiary hearings were open, and right now they're all closed door. Why is that the case?
Well, number one, they weren't all open, but most of them were open.
Yeah, that's what they're railing against.
Right, because the investigative work was done by Ken Starr.
Yes, that's the key.
And so they had this stuff, and then all they were really doing was confirming it. with Robert Mueller, who didn't have the same authority, they basically ignored everything he said, and so they had to start over. And by the way, that's a whole new problem. Mueller was investigating what happened for the people to get there, and oh, by the way, what were the bad things that Trump did to try to conceal what happened.
He was designated as an independent investigator or special investigator?
He was a special. It's different than Starr, but
because
I don't remember.
Starr had a different designation,
Right.
and so he could actually indict. That's
Yes,
that's what I read, but I forgot what the designation was. So he had the designation that he could take all the evidence and indict, whereas Mueller did not have that. So he was kind of he was working within the bounds of the terms of his appointment.
And the Justice Department had written this memo saying you can't indict a sitting president after the fact.
Yes.
So the rules changed markedly. And I understand the logic. I understand the logic of executive privilege, the fact that if Trump ever had a conversation with somebody after the age of 3, that now becomes executive privilege, I have a little trouble with. But the idea that people can't sit around in a room or a group like this and exchange ideas and maybe say something that they'd rather their wives and children didn't hear. That I'm sympathetic to that. But at some point, and oh, by the way, it is also absolutely true, if there was a crime involved and being discussed, there was a conspiracy or admission or whatever, then that cannot be covered by executive privilege.
So if you look at the whole thing, right now there is no way out other than let the Congress go through the motions and come out at the end with either articles of impeachment or say there's nothing.
Or say we, the jury, do not find this person guilty. It's not necessarily to say that he's innocent, but because you don't need an absolute perfect, all 100 senators do not agree. There can still be, maybe he did X, Y, and Z bad, but we still don't want to remove him from office.
But before you go to the Senate, I think Pelosi has to come out with some statement. Let us say they don't find compelling evidence to indict. So what happens then?
It's done.
It's done.
It's done. There is no other. Now they can come back with different evidence, maybe for a different crime, but they've effectively said, we investigated this and we've decided that it's not worthy of sending to the Senate.
So that's what that's why I have been against the whole process, is because I assume that no matter what Nancy Pelosi comes out with, Trump's machine is going to quote unquote prove that people are going against him as a vendetta, rather than actually provide evidence that he did something wrong. So either one thing is that maybe the Nancy Pelosi comes out with an indictment, then the machinery will go in overdrive and say, see, I told you this is political vendetta, and Mitch McConnell will take care of it. On the other hand, Nancy Pelosi comes out and says, we didn't find enough evidence. Trump comes out and says, see, I told you.
Right.
They were out to get me. In the and of course, what is going to happen? People are going to run out on the streets and vote overwhelmingly the guy back in. Either way.
You believe that?
Yes, I believe that.
And
I believe that he's going to win again.
Very real.
He's going to win again.
Well,
we are going to vote him in.
So that's interesting. That's one reason why I think that we need not head for impeachment. We need to let your president go on, and he will do himself in, because that's how he is. And as all the citizens of this country observe him for the next months without impeachment, when he reapply for the next president's job, the next come up, the citizen need to say, we let you along for this time, we didn't impeach you, but we don't want you as president.
I don't think that that's, I think it would be very nice. I don't think that's likely to happen. We know that, just from polls, that there's a hard core of around 30 to 35% of the population that supports anything he does. Anything he does. If anybody else did it, they'd be up in arms. But if Trump does it, everything's fine. There's probably about 40 to 45% of the population who hates the very sound of his name. The problem is that 30 to 35% vote. The 40 to 45% can be convinced, there are a variety of means, not to vote, or prevented from voting, which also happens. Just out and out, you can't vote. And then there's a group in between who may or may not vote one way or the other, but they start listening to all the noise. And Joe Biden, he's a real nice guy. Everyone up until about 3 months ago totally agreed, for 40 years, believed he was a real nice guy. Maybe a little bit of a doofus, although it turns out he's very effective in terms of convincing people to vote in a particular way. And now the Trump thing is, we're throwing everything at him. He has a son who may not be as nice a guy as Trump, as Biden, Joe Biden, but Joe Biden's horrible because he allowed his son to do X, Y, and Z. The Trump kids, they can do whatever they want because they're the Trump kids, and that's perfectly fine. Once you start allowing that to go on, Warren, Bernie is a socialist. Warren says, I am not a socialist. I'm a capitalist. I just want to reform the system. She will be a communist if she is the nominee. And there are a whole bunch of people, you put that label on them, and people who would otherwise be voting against Trump would suddenly either vote for him or at least not vote at all, or vote for some Green Party candidate.
I mean, to take it further, one of the major drawbacks for the Democrats is that there is no charismatic leader, charismatic speaker in the sense you have Trump. He says anything and everything, people just fall for it. But you look at Warren, and major problem, she's Harvard, one of those East Coast elites. Once you label that, forget she's gone.
She was born in Oklahoma, but that doesn't count.
That doesn't matter.
As opposed to Trump, who was born in the middle of Queens,
Yeah.
close enough to the Midwest not to bother. But
that's great, and that's it, and that's why I'm saying that no matter what the Congress comes up with, Trump is going to win.
So are we suggesting that are we suggesting that no matter what, we have this person? And for me, that is terrible. Like I said, I do not want to impeach our president.
Yeah,
or your
Yes.
president.
And
However,
I also say that, but
By the way, I was in that camp for a long time because I don't like the precedent. But his goal is to push and push and push until he is impeached and then win,
yes,
and then he can do anything he wants.
well, no. As an ordinary citizen, all these citizens, they are listening, they're watching the news, they're reading, they're finding out things that they didn't know before.
Actually,
and
I
I'm
disagree
hoping
with
that-
you. I don't think they are.
You don't think they are?
I actually go with Bob there because I will tell you one thing. Well, look at this. This is I'm not. It's not an intended transition, but that's what is happening. What I'm going to say is that look what happened in Syria. Russia moves in with their troops, and they march in, they take over, and what does Trump come out with? He comes out with, look, we have victory, we have won, no bloodshed, no nothing, and he declares victory on it. Now, the thing is, when I hear it, I say, well, look at that, President did a great job. Nobody is hurt. But what has happened actually on the ground, talk to the Kurds, talk to the people in Syria, what has happened, and you will then know what is actually happening on the ground. But we have declared victory, and I like that what President has said. President has declared victory. I'm happy. I will vote for him. Why not? I'm not going to listen to what MSNBC says or what CNN analysts, those talking heads, are going to say. President told me this.
Right.
So do you?
And nobody important died.
No, that's nobody.
Nobody important. The Kurds,
I mean-
they were fighting for their own land,
Yeah.
so that doesn't count.
No.
They were fighting and dying, and we were telling them where to go. So we weren't dying, but we wanted to get rid of ISIS. And then when we found out that the Kurds were the ones who were guarding, despite what Trump said, the Kurds were guarding the ISIS people, and when the Kurds went out to defend their own land, what a criminal thing to do, some of the ISIS people got away, and Trump said, I don't care, because they're not going to come to the United States, they're going to go to Europe. Who cares about the fact that they're going to blow up Europe? Not important.
This is, I mean, one thing is correct. What Trump said is, it is the Middle East has been a firmament for a long time, but at the same time, Kurds have been allies to the United States. They have trusted U.S. people. They have trusted U.S. governments. They have been fighting against ISIS on behalf of the United States.
Right.
And they have essentially, they defeated ISIS
Yes.
with the support of U.S. But if they were not on the ground, ISIS would still have been there. And to your point, ISIS prisoners, you see that there is the videotape, they just run away because there was all jailbreak actually happened because there was nobody there. And so...
And I guarantee you that the moment ISIS has another attack, Trump will blame somebody. The fact that everybody said this is what's going to happen and it's your fault. Hey, my basic, we were talking about labels
Yes.
and how labels are important. I'll give you a label. Childish Donnie the Welcher. It's a little hard to put on a bumper sticker, but with a little bit of effort, I'm sure we can. Childish, because that's the way he acts. Welcher, because he doesn't pay his debts.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't pay. He personally doesn't pay. His organizations don't pay. When he goes out to have a political rally, not making a speech as president, but a political rally, his campaign is supposed to help pay for the security. There are at least 10 cities out there that are still waiting for their money.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. And it's not like he doesn't have anything because he's raised $125 million. $125 million, but he can't afford to pay the cities back for the security.
And do you think that our citizens has, in watching this over the last few years, have learned a lot about everything?
What they've learned is that these college-educated people such as me have been running things and they're doing well and I'm getting crap. So therefore, anything you do to them, and maybe if it hurts me a little bit, that's okay, because you're getting those people more. And very soon they're going to find out that the swamp that Trump is draining is being drained into his pocket, as opposed to everybody else's pocket.
But we won't find it out right now. I mean, it's going
Well,
to
you
take
won't
some...
find it out until somebody actually goes in and does
Yes.
an audit.
Right now, we can't find it out, so it's too late by that time. And by that time, we'll vote him in. And there's a documentary actually where you have the Stephen Miller, no,
Stephen Miller, the speechwriter?
Trump's advisor,
Stephen Miller.
Stephen Miller and
Yeah.
Bannon and Kushner, and they were Bannon was talking about is that when they started the campaign, the ideas Trump and he and Kushner were proposing were outliers, and now what has happened is it has all become mainstream. So I was astonished that he observed that, and that is only because they have a machinery that has made it possible for all those ideas to become mainstream, and then they are running with it, and that is what is running the country. And I don't see Democrats putting up contrary ideas which will have traction.
Okay. So today or tomorrow, what sort of options do we have besides impeachment
There are none.
for this country?
There are none. I have a question and I have a potential answer. When Trump tells his people, do not cooperate in any way, shape, or form with the House on anything, even before the impeachment inquiry. Anytime they want to ask you a question that I don't want you to answer, don't do it. Contrary to the Constitution. What the House has threatened to do, but in the last 6 months to a year has yet to do, is to go to court and say, this is our job. This is constitutionally our job, and they are not doing what they're supposed to do. In that particular case, who is he going to be afraid of? Who is going to stop him? He runs the Justice Department, so therefore there's no federal law enforcement that can do anything about it. He runs the Army, and God forbid we don't want the Army to decide one way or another, I don't care which way, one way or another, it's their responsibility to fix the country. He's packing the courts, so even if he were afraid of the courts, give him a little bit more time and there won't be a judge out there who would say anything against him.
I mean, already you have Pompeo declare that he's not going to cooperate.
Well, he's not the only one, he's just the latest.
Yes, that's what he said actually in one of the news items.
Yeah, he out and out said no.
No.
It's none of your business.
Yes.
Just give us whatever money we want. And by the way, you don't have any rights to question what we're going to do with the money, or even how much. Give us what we want, and we'll go ahead. And by the way, that was exactly how the Reichstag in '33 found itself. The man said, jump, and they said, how high? And can I come down now, sir?
Well, the citizens weren't that way all the time, and I think we are learning as citizens what is going on in this country right now, and I think it's important that people start thinking about not only the vote for the president, but the vote locally. Who are those that can help us take this country forward and decrease some of the anger that is around right now? Who, our local leaders, we can take a look at the local leaders and do things about the local leaders that could be beneficial to the country.
Well, it's a good idea actually what you just proposed, but that is exactly what the Republican Party has been doing for the last 30 years. They have worked at the grassroots level to make sure that the local bodies and up have slowly increased their Republican majority, and gradually they are changing the opinion of the people in a way that is conducive to their outlook. But at the same time, you also have to see that the democracy, as far as I can see, is that we have democratic systems have a flaw in this in the way it works, because you just need what 51% of the people to say yes, and that's it, and then it could be bad or it could be good depending upon who you are. And unfortunately that's what the democratic systems work like that. And we do not like it because we are affected, or we might like it because we are favored. And so after 4 years, that memory is gone. We are in a new phase, and we forget what happened 4 years before. And that is what, if you look at the history of the United States over the last 250 years, you see this, at least in the foreign policy regime and domestic also, same thing happening again and again. You had President Hoover's recession, although the fellow did not create a recession, but who was the president? Roosevelt. Roosevelt ran on that, and he won. I mean, but was that Hoover's fault? Hoover was the guy who fed people from Europe on his own money. I mean, this was kind of interesting. I didn't know this.
I didn't know that he did it on his own money.
And he collected money too, but
right.
He also did it on his own money. But it was kind of astonishing for me to look at that and see, look at that, how the political will changes, how the political memory changes, and how you can mold the opinion of the people based on a charismatic leader. If you have that, I don't see that in the democratic setup, right? I mean, in Democratic Party, I mean, we don't have that.
Well, Obama was
yes
fairly, and despite a number of disadvantages, he won, but he only won in large measure because the country had gone through not 1929, but
close enough.
Close enough for government work, and they were looking for an alternative. I tell you, the guy who I find, if you're looking for a charismatic leader in the Democratic mold, Buttigieg.
Yeah, Buttigieg, yes. But the unfortunate thing for him is that he's not gaining traction.
Yeah, he is. He's up to 10%, which may not sound like a whole bunch, but
he was 1%. He was 1%.
He was, I think, 2 or 3, but he's gaining.
Yeah, well, I don't know whether he will. Well, I hope so.
I don't think
if he can. He makes sense.
Yeah.
He makes sense what he says, and if he can gain traction and go closer to Biden, I think that ticket might be a winning ticket. But I don't think Biden-Warren ticket is going to be a winning ticket.
I think you may have to do that only to get the far left to support Biden. Remember, one of the reasons why Trump won, with some help, by the way, was that the far left never forgave Clinton for some real, some perceived slights that were done to Bernie. I could see the same damn thing happening again with help, because the Russian bots are not going to go away. Certainly if Warren doesn't win, but if she's not on the ticket, she can support Biden or whoever as strongly as Bernie supported Clinton, which he did. But the slights don't go away. It's interesting to see how this is working. South Korea and Japan have been close allies for a variety of reasons for a number of years. Suddenly, they're fighting with each other. Why? Well, it turns out that people are reminding the South Koreans about the
comfort women.
the comfort women,
Yes.
the things that happened in World War II. Admittedly, horrible things,
Yes.
but have nothing to do with today.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, the Japanese have in fact paid money to these people, the survivors at least. But suddenly it's a big deal. Why? Somebody's running around reminding them. And I think that in large measure is the Russians, or maybe the Chinese, or it could be anybody. Once you know how to do it,
Could be North Koreans. You never
it could
know.
be, yeah, saying, look, how can you be friends with these horrible, horrible people? They did your mother.
Yeah.
So where do you think this country is headed?
Deep doo-doo. Deep doo-doo. I'm trying to be polite.
In what way?
Hmm?
In what way?
Because we are willing to be led around by the nose by various people. And oh, by the way, today it's Trump with the Russian support. Tomorrow it'll be
Bannon.
well, no, tomorrow it'll be some liberal
Yeah.
with Sweden's support. In the same way as Rwanda, the original problem there was, and I get confused as to which group was which.
Houthis and Tutus.
Yeah,
No.
one of which was in charge and tried to wipe out
Yeah.
the other, and then a number of years later it got reversed, and they went and did the same damn thing. And it's once that starts going, there's literally almost no way to recover.
I mean, that's what happened in Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
Essentially, they basically annihilated the pristine country into pieces, and the economy has basically tanked.
Well, it certainly isn't as good now
No,
as it was
it's not.
then.
I mean, so
Yeah.
so you have the most powerful country in the world, and if the people who populate the Congress, populate the Senate, and populate the presidency don't see that and do not come out with the interest of the country at their forefront, I think they are doing some disservice for the country.
Let me correct one thing. I do not think we're the most powerful country in the world.
Well,
We can destroy the
well,
world
that's-
faster than anybody else, but
that's
we're
it,
not
that's
the
it.
only ones who can do it.
no, but at this time, we have the most armaments to destroy the world quickly.
Right. But power is used to accomplish something, and we have resigned. We have told the world, yeah, we don't care. If you don't help us when we ask for help, you're bad people. But we don't care what you do among yourselves. Children, go and play, and don't interrupt the adults who are sitting at the table having a conversation. Getting back to Syria.
Yes.
That was exactly the case. Syria was relatively stable.
Yes.
We had gotten rid of the big irritants, which nobody wanted, ISIS, and things were kind of stable. The Russians were taking control of the main government, but they weren't aggravating anything. And Trump said, okay, I'm done. I want all these people out of this part of Syria, but I'm going to put extra people over on the other side because oil is important. I want to have my people there to protect the oil, but not to protect the people who are protecting the oil. When we resign, when we tell everybody we really don't care, the most you can expect from us, I'm saying the most, not guaranteed, is that if we promise to pay you X number of dollars to do something, we'll do it. But the moment we're done, we don't care. We don't give a flying.
I mean,
Trying to be polite,
yeah,
it's not working.
But the thing is, to your point, actually, this has been a problem for the U.S. foreign policy forever. That gradually, what the whole world is finding out is that you can't trust the United States. And that is sad, actually, because most of the world wants to emulate United States. But at the same time, if the most of the people in the world can't trust United States, it is a problem for the general outlook for the country. I don't know how to fix it, but
I'm wondering when Saudi Arabia will realize that even they don't have enough money to keep us interested. The moment that somebody, pushes, walks up to chest and says, "Get out of the way," and Trump will leave. And we have enough oil. We don't need any oil, and we're going to run Mexico, so we'll have more than enough, and we don't care. So everybody else does well, and sends and Ebola comes into the country. It doesn't matter. It's not our fault. It's not going to matter because Trump is going to be protected. The poor schlub who comes in contact with somebody who came in contact with somebody who came in contact with somebody, not my problem.
I mean, that's the other piece to that is that in world policy, politics, it's not only the as I was pointing out, the most powerful country. It's not only the military power that counts. What also counts is the soft power,
right,
which has become more important in the current economic times, actually. And that is where if the United States does not advance that soft power piece, what is going to happen is gradually you see China taking over, you see Russia taking over, and what is going to happen is U.S. is going to be left behind, and that doesn't bode well moving forward for the country.
By the way, earlier we were saying, what are we going to do about the bad things that are going on? I think Syria may, for a number of people, be the tipping point. We got embarrassed.
Yes.
We got embarrassed for what we did. And yeah, Trump is going to make up all kinds of crap. I stopped the war.
Yes, we have declared victory. So what's wrong with that?
It's wonderful. Turkey said, we want this, and we're willing to fight for it. And Trump said, okay, fine. By the way, this part that we want, we can't have these Kurds in there because they're not our kind of people. We got to kick out a million Kurds, so we can put 2 million Syrians in there, get them out of Turkey because we've been supporting them with Europe's money for too long. And Trump said, fine, but I'm going to put my tanks. I'm out of the Middle East. I'm done. I've brought all the troops home, except that I'm going to bring in tanks and more troops for another part of the same country, a few miles away.
Well, I'd like to see a newspaper that I can read one day that it doesn't have issues and statements about the President Trump. I'd like to see other things, television, that is not focused on the president. In the past, we were able to look at other things and decide on other things, but now it's just Trump.
Because that's what Trump wants. He opens up his mouth, and in many cases, maybe not all, but in many cases, he wants to be the center of attention. And the easiest way to be the center of attention is to say something or do something totally obnoxious.
That's an interesting policy, actually. How
it works.
It works for him, but for general people, it doesn't work like that. But I don't think it works for common people. That common person goes around. I mean, he said it on during one of his rallies that if he goes and shoots somebody on Fifth Avenue, nothing's going to happen. Right. I mean, if somebody else says that,
he'll probably go to jail.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't work for common
people. If I have enough money, then most of the time, if I have enough money, I have to give some of it out to get the get people to support me. But in Trump's case, I can just say I have all this money, and maybe someday I'll give you some. And everybody's waiting.